Well, hello everybody. Welcome back into the Color Gemstone Academy. My name is Paul Deasy. I am your instructor, and this is my YouTube channel. It is called Paul Deasy Gemstones. Now, first of all, we are closing in on 800 subscribers now, so I want to thank each and every one of you who have subscribed. And if you haven't done so yet, please just hit the subscribe button. I know it says subscribe, but it doesn't cost you a penny. It's completely free. And my goal is to make this the largest weekly free gemstone class on YouTube. So help me out there. All right. I also decided I'm going to make one other change. I was starting to do question and answers before every single lesson, but I'm getting so many questions that are really awesome questions from so many of you. I'm going to start to do separate videos. Maybe I'll do them midweek, like Wednesday or something like that. I'm going to do separate, shorter videos and give you maybe 3 or 4 questions each week that we could, because I know that a lot of you might have the same questions. So that's that. Anyway, I wanted to also say that this is another lesson that is by subscriber request. It is from Devil's Day Mo, who happens to be from Australia, and he has asked about one of my favorite gemstones out there, and it is called Chrysoprase. And ironically, or I don't know if it's ironic or by happenstance, he happens to live very close to where a lot of this gemstone happens to be mined, which is in Australia. So this lesson will be on Chrysoprase. Okay, so what the heck is Chrysoprase? Well, it happens to be one of the most valuable members of the chalcedony quartz family of gemstones. Now, for those of you that think, let me think. Chrysoprase and chalcedony sounds a little familiar to me. Well, that's because I did a lesson, I believe it was episode 33, and it was called Quartz Part 2. So I went from Quartz Part 1, where we talked about amethyst and citrine and all of those that you know, and then I started talking about the chalcedony family, which is also very widespread. And as I said, Chrysoprase happens to be one of the most valuable members of that family. In fact, one of the nicknames, which I really call a misnomer, but one of the nicknames of Chrysoprase is Australian Imperial Jade. All right, now you're confusing me. Why is this important? Why did you bring up jade when we're talking about Chrysoprase? Well, there's a reason why. One of the most valuable gemstones in all of the world is something called Imperial Jade, and it comes from Asia. Literally millions of dollars have been commanded for certain pieces of Imperial Jade, and kingdoms have been traded in history over a single piece of Imperial Jade. Well, I'm going to show you first a picture of some Imperial Jade on your screen. And you can see it's a beautiful semi-transparent gemstone in a beautiful green color. And now I'm going to show you a piece of what I would call really a great gem quality Chrysoprase. And it's somewhat similar. Still translucent. You can see semi-transparent. You can see almost through it. But what's the difference really? Can you kind of see a little bit of a difference in them? I'll show you again. Here is the Imperial Jade, and then here is the Chrysoprase. Now, if you'll notice, it may be really subtle to you, but if you'll notice, the green in the Imperial Jade is a darker color, even though it's not any less semi-transparent. But that's because that color comes from chrome. That you see that in the chrome diopside lesson we talked about. You'll see it in the emerald lesson we talked about. Whereas the green in the Chrysoprase is a little bit more of an apple green color, and that's because its color comes from nickel. Okay, so we noticed that the color, a little bit different, comes from nickel. Okay, not a big deal, but what's the difference really in kind of the value of these stones? It's really kind of night and day. I want to show you a picture of a jade necklace. I think it was called the Hutton necklace. And this is a strand of Imperial Jade beads. And it sold at auction in 2014 at a Sotheby's auction. One single piece, one single necklace of Imperial Jade, $27.6 million. Now, there's nothing close to that in the Chrysoprase. It's going to get that value. But I will tell you, and I told this to the person who requested the lesson, I noticed in the past probably 5 to 10 years, the value, the price of chrysoprase has gone up significantly, but it's never going to be anywhere near what you're going to spend on Imperial Jade. Okay, so why do we call it chrysoprase? Where does the name come from? What are the statistics and all the boring stuff that I have to give you? Well, it comes from two Greek words. The first one is chrysos, which translates into gold, and the second is prason, which was a word that was used to describe any sort of leek colored gemstone, like a yellowish green gemstone, and that's really more what the chrysoprase is. So my interpretation, chrysoprase means green gold, and it really is, as I said, one of the most valuable members of the chalcedony quartz family. But let's talk about that. So what's chalcedony? And again, I know I have a lesson on this, so I don't want to bore people with going over this again and again. But there's quartz. In fact, let's talk about the chemical composition. The chemical composition of a chrysoprase is silicon dioxide. And those of you who know, when we talked about amethyst, what's its chemical composition? Silicon dioxide. What is citrine? Silicon dioxide. What is the chrysoprase? Silicon dioxide. But the difference is, where the other ones are a single quartz crystal, this is what they talk about as being a microcrystalline quartz. That means that it's not able to be identified with, unless you have enhanced magnifying methods to see that it is, the crystal structure in that is so micro, so small, but it's still part of the quartz family of gemstones. So like the quartz family of gemstones, it's trigonal in its crystal structure. The hardness, remember the Mohs scale of hardness, the ability for one gem to scratch another gem. This would be 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness, just like everything else in the quartz family. And that's 7 out of a possible 10. And then when we talk about the toughness of the gem, which is its ability to withstand cracking or chipping, it is rated good. So yes, your chrysoprase would be a great gemstone to wear every single day. No problems there. Refractive index, that talks about the sparkle of the gemstone. It rates between a 1.53 and a 1.54. Again, not the most sparkly. You go into your diamonds and moissanites, and they're going to be much higher than that. But this is not a gem that is really known for its sparkle. It is known for looking like the version of Imperial Jade. Specific gravity. What is that? That's the heft of the gemstone. You remember the heft. It's the density of that gemstone, and that would be 2.61. I always compare all of the specific gravities to a sapphire, which is a 4 on the specific gravity. This is nowhere near that. Again, and that determines the weight versus the size of the gemstone, basically. What causes the green color in this chrysoprase? It comes from nickel oxide compounds. What are the sources of this gemstone? Well, it is found in Australia. I mentioned that earlier. It is found in Brazil. It's found in Russia, and it's found in the United States of America. But I will tell you that probably 85% or greater of all of the chrysoprase in the world that is found comes from Australia, either in Queensland, which is kind of the state in the northeast part of the country, or Western Australia, obviously, in the western part of the country. Now, I will tell you that nickel mining is a very important industry in the country of Australia. And just like I talk about turquoise, and I say you can't have turquoise without copper. So that's usually found in and around where copper is mined. Well, the same is true of your chrysoprase. You cannot have chrysoprase without some nickel in there. So it's found in and around where nickel is mined. And it just so happens that Australia has some pretty spectacular nickel mines in there. In fact, there's a very interesting story about nickel mining and 2 different gemstones in Australia. All right, so there are 2 very important gemstones that come from Australia that are tied indelibly with the nickel mining industry. One of them is chrysoprase, what we're talking about today, because that's where the color comes from. Another one I'm going to show you, this is a pretty rare gemstone, but I kind of love it. It is called gaspiite. Now, what is gaspiite? You can kind of see from the color, that kind of yellowish green or greenish yellow. And they call it nickelium magnesite. So magnesite, I've already showed you a magnesite in the past called pristine, which is a white magnesite. This is one that is heavily influenced by nickel in Australia, and it is called nickelium magnesite. Now, it is a pretty expensive variety, and that would be a carbonate material, not anywhere near close to what but again, nickel is a primary color that lends its trace elements to that color. So my friend Peter Vida, who I met in the opal fields of Australia, he's also big in the turquoise industry, a gem expert, knows more than probably anybody that I know. He was telling me some stories when he was showing me some gaspiite. And he said that the problem with gaspiite is it's found around nickel mines. And there's a really big conglomerate companies that own the land that are doing the nickel mining. And then you would have the gem hounds that would be sneaking on, maybe even after dark, to try and get into the tailings. Tailings means when they're digging a mine, and when they set that earth aside, they call that the tailings, where people then can pick through it. Happens in opals all the time in Australia, where they can pick through it and try and find some gemstones. Well, the problem with that is there were people that were sneaking in while the operations of nickel were still going on, and some of them ended up being killed. And I don't mean by being shot by somebody for trespassing. They got caught in some of the machinery of like huge trucks in the machinery of the nickel mine. And you're saying, well, no, that's a little bit far-fetched. I mean, I know they're big machines, but how can that be? Let me show you a machine that is used in the nickel mining in Australia. And I know it's a picture. You're saying, okay, I don't get it. I mean, I don't have any sense for how big that is. Take a look at this next photo, and you're going to see, just look at the tire and look at the truck that is just near it, and the tire is larger than that entire truck. So you don't want to be anywhere where this truck is going, because you're going to lose. You're going to lose in the game of chicken between you and the tire on this machine. And then I'm going to show you one more photo, because you can see how they dig deeper and deeper and deeper to get to the nickel deposits. And so what the mining companies did to discourage more people from coming on is each day they would have a pit that might be 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 feet deep. And they would take all the tailings of the day and put them down into that 3,000 foot hole. I don't know if it's 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, but that's a lot. So they obviously weren't going to expend the energy to go down 1,000 feet to try and sift through tailings to find. And plus, you don't want to be there when they dump more things down there. So that sort of put an end to all of the poaching on the fields of Australia to find some gaspiite or some chrysoprase. But again, I really love this gemstone. I think it is one of the most beautiful and unheralded gemstones on Earth. I know that certain gem collectors have it. The best quality that you're going to want is going to be pretty solid color with not any discoloration in it. And again, you'd be able to shine a light through so that you can see that it is a translucent, not an opaque stone. Well, that's going to do it for my lesson on chrysoprase. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, if you are watching for the first time, or maybe you've been watching and you never subscribed, please subscribe. It really does help me do more of these lessons for you. Helps me move up the charts. And remember, I'm going to start doing a lesson on Wednesdays. Let's just call it, I'll release it Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's just going to be covering some of the most frequently asked questions that I get each week, and it might be yours. So look forward to that. I'll make another announcement when it's up there. But I'm going to say Wednesday at 5 p.m. we'll have question and answers. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week. Remember, every single week at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, on Saturday in the United States of America. That is when the next lesson drops. Thanks for watching, everybody.